The world doesn't run on gold, oil, or technology. It runs on paper. A piece of paper so powerful, it decides who wins wars, who stays poor, and who rules the global economy. The US dollar isn't just money, it's control. And for decades, that control has been disguised as freedom, hidden behind polished speeches, international trade deals, and wars fought in the name of democracy. But beneath the flags and slogans lies a truth too uncomfortable to admit. Every country that tried to escape the dollar's grip, from Iraq to Libya, met the same fate, and every nation that obeyed it paid a quiet price. Inflation, dependency, and debt that never ends. Because the dollar isn't just currency. It's the most dangerous monopoly in history, and like every monopoly before it, its fall won't be peaceful. It all began in 1944, inside a small hotel in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. As World War II raged across continents, 44 nations gathered to decide how the world's new financial order would work once the smoke cleared. Europe was in ruins. Asia was shattered, and there was only one country left with gold, industry, and stability: the United States. So when the world needed a new system, America made an offer that sounded like salvation. Peg your currencies to the dollar, and we'll peg the dollar to gold. It was simple, elegant, and genius. Every nation agreed, because what choice did they have? The dollar became the anchor of global trade. Oil, food, weapons, and technology, all priced in US dollars. The green paper that once represented America's economy now represented everyone's economy. But behind that agreement was a silent power shift, because while the world thought it was buying stability, the United States had just bought control. A control that would slowly, quietly turn into dominance, and eventually into a weapon. It started innocently, with trust. For decades after Bretton Woods, nations sent their gold to the US in exchange for dollars, believing those dollars were as good as gold. America promised discipline, but power never stays humble for long. By the 1960s, the US was printing more dollars than it had gold, funding wars, debt, and political dreams with ink instead of value. Countries like France began to notice. President Charles de Gaulle called it America's exorbitant privilege. He saw what was coming. The world was holding paper backed by nothing. So he demanded gold instead of dollars. When French ships started sailing toward New York, loaded with empty vaults ready to reclaim gold, Washington panicked. In 1971, Richard Nixon faced a choice: lose America's gold or lose the world's trust. He chose both. With one televised announcement, Nixon ended the dollar's link to gold, turning money into pure belief. Overnight, the world's economy became a faith-based system held together by confidence and fear. But instead of collapsing, the dollar became even more powerful. Because now America could print limitless money, and the world still had to use it. How? Oil. In a secret deal with Saudi Arabia, the US ensured that every barrel of oil would only be sold in dollars. If you wanted energy, you needed dollars, no matter who you were. This petrodollar system turned America's paper into global oxygen. It didn't matter whether you were Japan, Germany, or India. Your trade, your savings, your economy all depended on the dollar. And if you refused, you'd be cut off from the global market. A modern economic death sentence. This wasn't just finance anymore. It was empire building without armies. Wars were now fought with sanctions, not swords. Crises were created, currencies destroyed, governments toppled, all through control of money flow. From Latin America's debt trap in the 1980s, to Asia's financial meltdown in the 1990s, to the Middle East wars of the 2000s, the dollar stood at the center of every story. It became the judge, the jury, and the executioner of the global economy. But every empire built on manipulation eventually meets resistance. And today, that resistance is growing, quietly but powerfully. Today, the same system that once gave America power is starting to show its cracks. Because when you control the world's money, you eventually start believing you can rewrite its rules. After the 2008 financial crash, the US printed trillions of dollars to save its banks, and the world paid the price through inflation. During the pandemic, it happened again. Trillions more were printed out of thin air, flooding the global economy with paper that pretended to be wealth. And once again, the cost didn't fall on Wall Street. It fell on everyone else. Ordinary people saw their savings shrink. Food got expensive. Housing became a dream. And nations began to ask the forbidden question: why do we still trust the dollar? China started trading oil in yuan. Russia turned to gold. India, Brazil, and Saudi Arabia began discussing a new system under the BRICS alliance, one that might finally challenge the American monopoly. Meanwhile, digital currencies and blockchain opened a door the US can't fully close. Money that moves without permission. For the first time in 80 years, the world is building a way out. But breaking free isn't easy, because every country's debt, reserves, and lifelines are still tied to the dollar. It's like trying to escape gravity while living on the planet that creates it. And that's what makes this moment so dangerous. The system is too fragile to sustain, but too powerful to change peacefully. History teaches one truth that never changes. When money turns into power, corruption always follows. The dollar story isn't just about America, it's about human nature. Every empire, from Rome to Britain, believed it could outsmart economics, print its way out of debt, and rule forever. But paper empires always burn the same way, slowly, through greed and denial. The first lesson is simple. Inflation isn't an accident, it's a tool, a silent tax on those who can't escape the system. The second, real wealth isn't money, it's assets, skills, and independence, things that hold value when paper doesn't. And the third, trust is the world's most valuable currency. Once it's broken, no army, no weapon, no interest rate can restore it. The dollar's dominance was built on trust, and that trust is fading fast. Because when money becomes a weapon, sooner or later, someone fires back. The dollar began as a symbol of freedom, but today it's a chain that binds the world to one nation's will. Every empire believes its money will last forever. But history whispers the same warning. No monopoly survives its own greed. Rome learned it in silver. Britain learned it in gold. And soon, America may learn it in paper. Because when a currency becomes a weapon, its greatest enemy isn't another country, it's time. If you want more stories of how money built and broke the empires of history, subscribe and stay tuned. Because the next collapse has already begun.